Monster Hunter Wilds is an absolute blast, but let me tell you, I made some crucial mistakes in the early hours of playing this game that I want to help you prevent from doing if you decide to pick up this game. So I put together 20 crucial tips to kind of help you in your early gameplay. Now, let me just say out of the gate, I'd never played a Monster Hunter game before, so this was my first foray into it because I've heard from a lot of different reviewers that said, this is a great place to start because it really made it accessible for new players. So I said, you know what, finally, I'm going to jump into this and give this a shot. And I have to tell you, there were some early rough moments, me figuring out the HUD, figuring out different ways to heal so I didn't die, all of that stuff. And now that I've got my hands around this thing, this game is fantastic. So let's dive in. I put together some 20 tips. I'm going to kind of fly through them pretty quickly. I'm not going to dwell too deeply on any one of them. You can rewind them, go back. But let's start off with the HUD, because this for me was a little overwhelming at first. You know, I'm sure old Monster Hunter fans will look at the HUD and think, oh, this is very familiar, or maybe this is a little bit more streamlined. But anytime you're getting all sorts of text and information on the screen and you're trying to figure out how to access it through the D-pad or the L1 button or, you know, the radial dial, and I've got a potion over here, I've got a trap over there, it can be all a little frustrating because you're pressing wrong buttons in the middle of battle and you're healing when you meant to be laying a trap. So let me just explain what we're looking at here on this HUD. Okay, so take a look at the lower right part of your screen here. Notice that I've got this whetstone available. Okay, that's the last tool that I chose to use. We'll get to that in a second, but notice here there's an L1. Click on the L1 to rotate between your different tools. And by tapping the square button, you can rotate left and go all the way through, or you can hit the circle button and go the opposite direction. And this allows you to put up different traps. Maybe you've got some exploding barrels. You want to use your whetstone. And then, of course, you can also then rotate between your radial dial, as you can see. So you can choose to have, which really, really cool. In the radial dial, you can actually create different build outs when you're back at camp. So you can actually customize these different build outs in your radial dial. So maybe you want to have some potions there, some traps there, some barrels there, and you can build them out as you see fit, which is really, really cool. Then take a look at the upper left-hand part of the screen. Of course, you've got your main hit points, your main energy. Beneath that in yellow is your stamina, and beneath that is your sword strength and the dullness of your sword. So when that starts to get really worn down and dull from attacking enemies, you want to sit down and you want to use your whetstone to sharpen your blade once again. This is really important. Otherwise, you're going to be stabbing these enemies with a really dull blade and not doing as much damage. And then notice in the lower left-hand part of the screen, of course, you've got your mini-map. I was really kind of ignoring the mini-map early on. Don't do that. Don't make that mistake, because this mini-map will show you a lot of really crucial information about enemy locations, and we'll get to what the little skull icon will mean here in just a little bit. But just a basic overview of what the HUD looks like here on your screen. All right, my second tip is to always bring the right traps and the right tranquilizer bombs for capturing enemies. You don't always want to kill them, and this is going to be crucial. And capturing, of course, rewards you with more materials than just killing. So early on, I was just killing. I'm like, wait a second, I can actually trap these guys? Again, I'm a newbie to Monster Hunter, so you want to make sure you've got pitfall traps or shock traps. If you're in like little tight spaces, you can use those. You can hit enemies with like 2 to 3 different tranquilizer bombs while they're stuck, and then boom, you can capture them that way. And again, remember that mini map in the lower left-hand part of the screen, because you're going to notice the little skull icon here as you've really weakened the enemy down to the point of being able to capture them. And they might be stumbling off, wandering back to a nest somewhere, and you'll notice that, really you can only capture them when they turn into a skull icon down there. And so you want to follow them to where they're going to kind of lay down and nearly at dying, and then you can spring different traps on them in that way as well. So make sure you bring the right kind of traps and tranquilizers to capture these monsters. Okay, number 3, don't just swing, make sure you're learning some weapon combos. And this is where going to the training area can be very useful. Again, I just did a whole deep dive review on Stellar Blade, and I talked about the different combos. They're so satisfying. You don't want to just be button mashing in this game. You want to learn different swipe combos and thrusting combos and aerial combos and all of those things. And some weapons like the Great Sword rely on charging attacks instead of rapid swings. I've been using the dual sword swords because I just want to be able to move a little bit more quickly and get in some quick attacks. But again, go to the training area and study the different move sets that you can be doing there, because a lot of the different weapons have vastly different combinations that you might enjoy. And you might enjoy using one of the long swords that's kind of slow and, like a giant hack. But again, those big charging attacks are going to be useful for you. So go and train. Next up, study the monsters. You can open up your monster journal and look at the large monsters, small monsters, and you can see their weak points. For instance, one large monster has their tongue as a weakness, okay? Others have the tail can be hacked off, and you want to be able to pay attention to that and really target your attacks on those weak parts of the monster. Look for drooling also, and look for exhaustion. So study their behavior. If you notice that they're starting to drool and they're starting to get exhausted, this is close to death. And so also you can follow wounded monsters. They're going to try to retreat back to get some sleep, and follow them on the mini-map. Where are they going? Because that's the perfect time to set a trap and then to capture those monsters. And for me as a newbie, again, in Monster Hunter, I kept looking on the HUD for where is their HP? Where's their energy here? How much damage am I doing? And that's, I guess, the brilliance of Monster Hunter. You don't know. So you've got to watch the monster and notice that, oh, I just took out their leg. Now I've broken their ankle. And it'll pop up on the screen letting me know that you just, now their right ankle is chopped off. And it's okay, now they're hobbling on their right foot. Little indications of how much damage you're doing, but you're not going to see an energy bar for any of these monsters. Number 5, dodging is better than blocking. I learned this from reading somebody's review a few weeks ago, and I took this to heart. So instead of getting a long blade and spending most of my time just trying to block, no, instead dodge, roll out of the way, and to be able to get in extra attacks. And that's why I chose the dual blade setup, because I can just hit X and dodge, roll out of the way, get right back up and do a slashing attack. So timing your dodge is perfect. At the last second, you can dodge right out of the way and get in a really nice attack. But if you do choose to use a sword, sort of a sword and shield combo, you want to use your blocks strategically. But I think, in my experience, dodging is better. I just think you're wasting your time with blocking attacks when you can be jumping really quickly out of the way on a dodge and doing some really nice swipe attacks and getting in some extra damage. Next up, did you know that you can craft on the go? So you don't have to be back in camp in order to craft items. For instance, you can press X and A in the item menu to craft items on the fly, like mega potions. Just use a potion plus honey while you're out in the field grabbing some honey off the vines. And you can gather that, put it right together, and create a mega potion while you're out in the field. You can also auto craft potions as well. When you pick up ingredients, you don't have to pick and choose. You can just do auto crafting, which is what I've kind of did at the beginning. I don't need to spend time going through all of these different menus, finding the different items. Just auto craft it for me. Also, make sure you get out your barbecue kit and cook in the field. So sit down, make a little fish meal if you want. And then, of course, those meals will last to provide extra stamina, extra energy throughout your battles. They'll last maybe an hour or so, and you'll see sort of a countdown timer on your screen. So you can do a lot of this on the go. You don't need to be back in the hub world in order to experience that. All right, let's talk about the mini map. Number 7 on my list for tips. I was kind of ignoring this, wasn't really sure what I was even looking at in this mini map, and then I started paying attention to it, realizing, whoa, there's a wealth of information in this little mini map down here you should pay attention to. Let's talk about the red eye icon. If you see a red eye icon, that means a monster sees you, and you can't use items at that point. If a monster sees you, sorry. And also the skull icon, very, very important. That tells you that a monster is ready for capture. So you've done a lot of damage. You're noticing that this guy is getting really, really hurt. Okay, he's probably going back to his nest to sleep somewhere. Follow that skull icon. That means that animal is ready to be captured. And also you can see large monster movements there as well. It'll show movement directions. So maybe you haven't engaged with a big monster, but you can see their movement on the map. And especially go to your monster journal book, and you'll notice the icon for each of these different monsters in your books as well. So pay attention to those. Number 8, let's talk about stamina. Very, very important, and it will drain very quickly. okay? So if you're running, you're dodging, you're attacking with certain weapons, your stamina is going to drain. Again, that's the yellow bar on the upper left-hand part of your screen. So make sure you're eating different rations. My stamina was running out quite a bit in the early part of the game, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? So eat some well-done steaks, grab some rations and eat these, and this will refill your stamina mid-hunt while you're in the middle of a hunt. And stamina naturally decreases over time, so keep an eye on that yellow bar. You're going to notice that that's vital to your ability to go on a hunt and carry out really awesome attacks on those monsters. Number 9, upgrade your armor, okay? But there's a little weirdness with this game, and I will say it kind of threw me off. And I also saw it threw off another reviewer over at GVG, Good Vibes Gaming. I noticed that he had the same problem that I did, which is go to the smithy and start to upgrade your armor. But you'll notice that it says at the top of the screen, upgrade armor, but you might not actually be upgrading the armor. You're just changing the look of the armor, okay? So this is very important because, again, notice the difference on the screen, like what am I actually increasing? What stats am I increasing over here? And you're like, oh, nothing. So you'll notice you only get to upgrade your armor at certain stages, okay? So you might be throwing away a lot of money just doing these upgrades, but they're not actually upgrades. But very, very early in the game, after your first boss hunt, after your first monster hunt, you will be able to upgrade your armor. So just pay attention to what that looks like when you're choosing. I chose chainmail. Okay, that's my armor. Notice that I can go through an upgrade process there and notice the stat change. Okay, but then after a few more hunts, I went back in to try to upgrade my armor. And there's no difference. There's no actually upgrading of the armor in stats. It's just giving you a different look and feel. So you're going to have to wait till later in the game as you're going on further hunts before you can actually do upgrades. So just don't fall for that. I think that's a mistake in the game. I think that's a mistake to put that at the top of the screen where it says upgrade, forge your armor. You're not actually upgrading. I know it's confusing, so just pay attention to that and notice the differences within stats when you're clicking out. Otherwise, you're just wasting a whole bunch of money just to change the look of your armor, but not actually upgrading your armor. But definitely you want to upgrade your armor when you can, okay? I'm just pointing this I think it's an error. They need to fix this, but it threw me off at the beginning. And I also was watching a review over at GVG, and he had the same exact problem happen to him, so I'm not alone in this issue here. So early in the game, you want to focus on defense, okay? Because you don't have a lot of offense. You're not very good yet with your swords. So just get a lot of high defense and high resistance. Upgrade your armor using those armor spheres, which are found in quests and rewards. So when you get those armor spheres, that's when you can go back and upgrade your armor. So just pay attention to that little weirdness in the game. Number 10, it's something I mentioned briefly, but make sure that you're not fighting with a dull sword. Pay attention to the upper left-hand part of your screen and pay attention to the sharpness of your sword. Dull weapons just bounce off of monsters. So I didn't know this in the beginning. I'm like, man, I'm not doing any damage. Why is this battle taking so long? Again, newbie, I'm not one to read game manuals, even though I'm like wishing we had more game manuals in our games these days, nostalgia, but then I'm like, I'm not reading them anyway. So it makes the fight much, much longer. Use wet stones, okay? Use wet stones. Keep it easily accessible in your menu options. Just tap it with a square, sit down for a few seconds, and you'll sharpen your blade. Make sure you're not in the way of an enemy at the time. After you've done a few attacks, move out of the way, sit down, use your whetstone for a few seconds, and make sure you're not in the way of a charging attack because they're going to run right after you and walk all over you while you're in the middle of sharpening your blade. Number 11, mounting monsters is game-changing. I'm not very good at it just yet, and this is something that I learned a little bit later that I could even do in this game. Jump off of ledges. You can do sort of backflips off of ledges and land in an aerial attack. You can use wire bug moves also to land on top of a monster. And you can attack them while you're mounted to their backs and do incredible damage. So this is an area that I want to spend more time working on and getting better at. Just know that you can do this, and if you can perfect this, you can deal massive amounts of damage. Some weapons, like the insect glaive, really are fantastic for you to excel at mounting attacks. So if you can perfect this, if you can track an enemy inside of a small cave area or a cove, and you can jump off a wall and do a backflip right on top of them, that's pretty killer. But again, it does massive damage if you can get good at doing that. Number 12, elemental weaknesses matter. Again, go back to your monster guide and study each monster. Understand, you don't want to bring a fire weapon into a fire-resistant monster fight. So study the weaknesses of these different animals. Do you want to bring armor-piercing rounds into this fight? Because they've got really strong scales. So where are their weak points? Study them, but you don't want to bring, again, fire into a fire-resistant monster fight. And the hunter notes inside your binder there, inside of your journal, the hunter's notes will tell you the weak points and weaknesses. So pay attention to that. Monsters become more vulnerable after taking damage, so just watch out for those openings. Okay, let's talk about traps and the importance of using different traps in this game. So you've got a pitfall trap, you've got a shock trap. A trap placed on the ground that makes the monster basically fall into a pit is the pitfall trap. A shock trap is one that electrocutes, paralyzes the monster temporarily. Both work, but some monsters are resistant to one another. So again, check your hunter's notes for weaknesses here. But where you place the trap is incredibly important. So select a pitfall trap or a shock trap from your item bar, okay? And then place it in the monster's path as it's coming towards you, or right next to where it's sleeping, and the trap will activate just as soon as the monster steps on it. Once the monster is trapped, then you want to use a tranquilizer bomb or tranquilizer ammo if you have it. If you're using a ranged weapon, you can throw 2 or 3 of these tranq bombs, and while it's trapped, and that'll help secure. Also, if you're using a tranq ammo, you want to shoot it in the head. Again, if you're using like a ranged weapon in that. And then if it's successful, then the animal will fall asleep and then it's captured. And then, of course, you're not killing it. You're getting all of the additional you're getting all of the additional rewards for having not killed this thing. Number 14. Always check the supply box back at your camp for some free stuff. We love free stuff. Every hunt, of course, starts with a supply box that's at the camp. So go there, get free potions, get rations, grab some traps, and then load it out properly. Make sure that you're all set before each hunt. You need to prepare. I think that's a really smart move, not to just jump into a battle and you haven't brought all of these items. You're going to be screwed when you get out into the field. And what's great is these supplies will refresh after each hunt. So make sure you grab that supply box and grab some free stuff. All right, number 16, aim for some weak points. Okay, not just anywhere. You have the aiming mechanic, so you can just hold down the left trigger button and choose an area that you're going to want to attack. Maybe it's, the calf muscle, or on certain animals, like cutting off the tail. So the tail is a weakness right in between the body and the tail. Maybe that's your focus. So you're going to really focus all of your attacks on that, the head, legs, tail area. Pick it, and then, obviously when you do that, when you cut off a tail, it's going to reward extra materials, which is really great. And breaking parts gives bonus loots. So hit specific areas and really target your attacks. You're going to get all sorts of extra loot as a result of that. Next up, don't ignore your Palico. This was something I was doing. I'm like, what is this little furry guy that's joining me? No, you do not want to ignore your Palico. I named mine Whiskers, which was my cat that I had when I was a kid, growing up in Pennsylvania. So, your Palicos will heal you. They will distract the boss, so you can heal yourself. You can sit down and use your whetstone while they're off like annoying the monster. They will also help trap your monsters using electrocution traps and things like that. So you want to pay attention to their gadget loadout. Go into and customize what they have. They have different healing effects. They have different bombs. Spend some time upgrading and focusing on your cat friend, your Palico. Otherwise, you're going to regret it later. I think about it in sort of, like Xenoblade. You're playing and you've got your healer on your team. Making sure that you've got a really strong healer protects you. It's very, very important to your game. So if you're playing solo, a strong Palico is your best ally. If you're playing as a team, maybe a little bit differently, but I've been playing solo. So yeah, have a strong Palico. Pay attention to your little cat friend. Next up, managing your inventory. You only have a set number of slots, so make sure that you're prioritizing what you want. Essential items like potions, strong potions, traps, whetstones, all of those things on hand when you're in battle. Storing unused items, you have an item box. Okay, so if you don't want to use these items right now, you don't need them right now, put them in your item box and prioritize the things that you need when you're in a battle. Using your loadouts. I love the loadout option because you can customize on your radial dial how you want your gear to be optimized for different hunts. Maybe you've got more of a ranged approach on this particular boss, so use that loadout, and you can customize all of that. And you can go with some of the defaults as well if you're not into one of those where you want to build out your own custom radial. That's fine as well. There are defaults, but again, all of that can be customized in those menus. So do it, take advantage of it. You only have so many slots to use. Next up is something I haven't done yet, which is multiplayer. But when you are playing multiplayer, it scales the monsters differently in this game, meaning monsters will be more difficult based on the size of the party. So if you're playing solo, it's going to be a little easier than if you're playing with 4 people. More players equals tougher monsters, but more opportunities to revive teammates who get knocked out, need assistance. And communication is key. There's also using ping and chat messages that you can use in the game to communicate. Also SOS. So I've been using the SOS feature. If you're in trouble in a battle, you can send up an SOS, a flare, and if you're playing offline, you'll just get AI. You'll just get some NPCs that will come assist you. If you're playing online, of course, you'll get real people that will come and assist you in battle, which is really great. So if you're down to your last little bit of health, you've run out of all your potions, you could send up an SOS and people will respond to those. And what's really cool is, of course, they will be rewarded. You know, they will gain valuable XP. They will be upgraded as well if they compete in these SOS battles. And that's something you can do as well. You can go back and join different quests, and if you want to be a part of an SOS, you can see if anyone shot up an SOS, and you can go off and be one of those people that comes to the rescue, and you will be rewarded. So I've done a couple of those, and it's great because you're helping somebody else, but you're also building yourself up as well, and you're getting nice upgrades. So definitely take advantage of the SOS feature in this game. Number 19, I love this. You can go back to the camp to restock. If you're in the middle of a hunt, you're low on potions, you're not doing so well, you want to change out your gear, you can even fast travel back to the camp. And some hunts will allow you to just go back and do that. And that's great. So you don't have to be so frustrated that you're just totally out of gear. You didn't properly pick your proper loadout for this battle. Just fast travel back to camp and get your stuff together and go back on the hunt. That's really, really great, especially for newbies who maybe don't know what they're doing exactly. And finally, number 20, just do more hunting. I, in the early stages, was choosing, instead of following the main story, you know what, I'm just going to go and do some side quests here. I'm going to go out and try to fight more of these monsters to learn the combat. And at the same time, I'm upgrading, I'm really building my character up nicely. I'm leveling up. I'm not doing the main story, but I just spent more time going after monsters again and again and again in order to build that up, learn my timing, learn how to use the L1 menu, have items ready to go, traps ready to go, all of those things. So after like 4 or 5 battles, I really felt good. And I said, okay, now I'm going back to the main storyline. So use the opportunity to join some of those quests, some of those monster hunts, just to build up your XP, just to level up a little bit, and then go back and upgrade your armor. What's great about doing those, you could fight that same fiery chicken guy over and over if you want to, and just keep building yourself up, and then go back to the main story quest if you want to. So spend time. The more hunting, the better you get. It's just like anything, right? Just like riding a bike. The more you ride, the better you are, right? So that's all this to say. These are 20 things that I wish that I knew when I started out, had a better understanding of the HUD, how all of the different items worked, how my combat maneuvers were working, why my dull blade wasn't killing these monsters, and how to sharpen my blade, how to use my Palico, how to use the training area, all of these things. I know for many veteran monster hunters out there, you're probably saying, of course, duh. But this is a new game for a lot of people, and I'm hoping that this is a great entry point to go back and start to revisit some of the classic Monster Hunter games. So guys, let me know down in the comments below, do you have any tips or strategies that you found useful as you're diving into Monster Hunter Wilds for the first time? Thanks so much for subscribing, and we'll see you next time, everyone.